If you told me 2 weeks ago that my seemingly perfect wife, Anna, was capable of betrayal, I'd have laughed in your face. She was the kind of woman who turned heads everywhere she went, polished, confident, with a sharp wit that could charm anyone. We had a life that most people envied. A cozy house in the suburbs, weekend getaways, and plans for kids in the near future. At least, that's what I thought. It all started with a message I wasn't expecting. I was at work, slogging through a pile of reports, when my phone buzzed. It was from Lucas, my stepbrother. He's not the kind of guy to reach out often, let alone during the workday, so I figured it had to be important. I unlocked my phone, expecting something mundane. Instead, his message hit me like a punch to the gut. "We need to talk about Anna." My first reaction? Confusion. What could Lucas possibly have to say about Anna? They got along well enough, but weren't exactly close. I stared at the screen for a moment before texting back. "What's going on?" His reply came quickly, not over text. "Can you meet after work?" The rest of the day dragged. I couldn't concentrate. My mind ran wild with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was she in trouble? Did Lucas see her with someone? By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was ready to explode. We met at a dive bar downtown, the kind of place we used to hang out at before life got in the way. Lucas was already there, nursing a beer and looking like he hadn't slept in days. As soon as I sat down, he leaned in, lowering his voice. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything," he began, "but I saw Anna last night." My heart sank. "Okay." "She wasn't alone," he said, his expression grim. "She was with some guy. Tall, dark hair, wearing a suit." They looked close. I felt my stomach churn. "Close how?" "Close as in holding hands, laughing, and leaning into each other at the bar," Lucas said bluntly. "And I heard her say something about your inheritance." That last part threw me. My inheritance was no small thing. My late father's estate, tied up in family businesses and investments, something Anna and I had discussed plenty. She knew I was careful about it, knew I wanted to preserve it for our future kids. What did she say? I demanded. Lucas hesitated. She said something like, "Once the divorce is final, we can figure out how to get what we need." The words hit me like a freight train. Divorce? Inheritance? What the hell was going on? I wanted to believe there was some logical explanation, but Lucas wouldn't make this up. He wasn't the dramatic type. Still, I needed proof. I wasn't about to blow up my marriage over hearsay. When I got home that night, Anna greeted me like everything was normal, like she hadn't been out scheming with another man less than 24 hours ago. She was all smiles, asking about my day, offering to pour me a glass of wine. I played along, pretending everything was fine while my mind raced. I needed answers. More than that, I needed the truth. And I was going to get it, no matter what it took. After Lucas's bombshell, every interaction with Anna felt like walking on broken glass. She was as warm and charming as ever, but now I couldn't tell if it was real or just an act. The idea of her laughing at some guy's jokes, whispering about my inheritance, and plotting a divorce sent a cold, gnawing anger through me. But I couldn't let her know what I suspected, not yet. I spent the next few days playing the role of the clueless husband. I kissed her goodbye in the morning, texted her cute messages during the day, and asked about her yoga class when she came home late. Inside, though, I was seething. I needed proof, something concrete that would blow her lies out of the water. So, I hatched a plan. One evening, while Anna was out running errands, I dug through her desk drawer. Anna loved organization, color-coded files, labeled envelopes, the works, so I hoped to find something that didn't add up. But the drawer was clean, filled with receipts, grocery lists, and nothing even remotely suspicious. Frustrated, I remembered something Lucas had said. Anna and her lover were at a bar when he saw them. That meant she had to be using her phone to coordinate with him. If she was careful, she'd delete messages. But what if she slipped up? I decided to set a trap. That night, when Anna was brushing her teeth, I slipped into the living room and installed a recording app on the smart speaker in the corner. It wasn't sophisticated, but it was enough to capture audio whenever someone was in the room. If she was planning anything, I'd hear it. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye with her usual sugary sweetness. "Have a good day, babe," she chirped, grabbing her keys. I watched her go, wondering how long she'd been lying to my face. After work, I rushed home and checked the app. My hands shook as I scrolled through the recordings. Most of it was boring. Anna talking to the cat, a phone call with her mom about an upcoming brunch. But then I hit pay dirt. It started with her voice, low and serious. "Greg, I told you. We need to keep this quiet. He can't know until it's all in place." My blood ran cold. Greg. So that was his name. She continued, "I'm handling it. He's so oblivious. He hasn't noticed a thing. Once the paperwork is ready, we'll get what we need, and then I'm done." Done. The word echoed in my head like a gunshot. Then Greg's voice came through, smooth and cocky. "You're sure he won't see it coming? Because if he does, we're screwed." Anna laughed. Laughed. "He's too trusting. Honestly, it's pathetic." Pathetic. That's what she thought of me. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. The conversation moved on to logistics, lawyers, accounts, even vague mentions of selling the house. Every word was another knife in my back. By the time the recording ended, I was shaking with rage. But rage wasn't enough. I needed a plan. First, I called Lucas. "You were right," I said, my voice tight. "She's cheating, and she's after my inheritance." "Damn," he muttered. "What are you going to do?" "Make sure she regrets it," I replied. I spent the next few hours gathering my resources. First, I backed up the recording in multiple places: my laptop, the cloud, even an old flash drive. Then I dug through financial documents, looking for anything she might have tampered with. If Anna thought she could outsmart me, she was in for a rude awakening. That night, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, I forced myself to smile. "How was your day?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She beamed. "Busy, but good. You know how it is." I nodded, pretending not to notice the faint smirk on her lips. Let her think she had the upper hand. She had no idea what was coming. Anna had betrayed me. But now, I was in control, and I wasn't going down without a fight. After hearing the recording, every moment with Anna felt like a high-stakes performance. I had to act normal, like I didn't know she was sneaking behind my back with Greg or plotting to steal everything I'd worked for. It was harder than I thought, especially when she flashed those practiced smiles or leaned in for a kiss. I reminded myself to stay calm. This wasn't just about exposing her. It was about making sure she couldn't wiggle her way out of the mess she'd created. The next day, I started digging deeper. The recording was solid, but I needed more. Something irrefutable. So, while Anna was out at her supposed yoga class, I searched her closet. She kept a small lockbox tucked away behind a stack of old sweaters, the kind that looked like it held keepsakes or important documents. It was locked, but she wasn't exactly a master of subtlety. I found the key in her jewelry box and opened it. Inside were a few photographs, an old letter from her late grandmother, and a stack of legal-looking papers. My stomach twisted as I thumbed through the pages. One was a draft of a prenuptial agreement, but it wasn't ours. It was new, dated just a few weeks ago, with Greg's name on it. Another was a printout of an email from a lawyer outlining steps to protect assets during a divorce. She wasn't just planning to leave me. She was laying the groundwork to bleed me dry. I took photos of everything with my phone before putting it all back exactly as I'd found it. If Anna noticed anything missing or out of place, the whole plan could unravel. That night, I decided to test her. Over dinner, I casually mentioned a business deal I'd been considering, something lucrative but still in the early stages. Anna's eyes lit up in a way that made my skin crawl. "That sounds like a great opportunity," she said, too eagerly. "Do you think it'll boost your inheritance?" I shrugged, keeping my tone nonchalant. "Probably. It's all tied to the family trust, so anything I earn goes back into the pot." Her smile widened, but I saw the calculation behind it. She was fishing for information, trying to figure out how much she stood to gain. It took everything I had not to throw my drink in her face. Instead, I excused myself to the living room, claiming I had work to do. From there, I watched her through the reflection of the TV screen. Sure enough, she pulled out her phone and started texting. I could only guess she was updating Greg on my potential windfall. I was right. The next morning, another recording confirmed it. Mark mentioned some new deal, Anna said, her voice sharp with excitement. If it pans out, there'll be even more to split once this is over. Greg chuckled. Sounds like he's doing half the work for us. Their casual betrayal made me sick, but it also steeled my resolve. If they thought I was just going to roll over and let them win, they were delusional. The first crack in Anna's facade came a few days later. We were at a family dinner at my mom's house. Just the usual Sunday gathering, with my mom and stepdad, Lucas, and a couple of cousins. Anna loved playing the doting wife at these events, laughing at everyone's jokes and offering to help in the kitchen. But this time, she seemed distracted. Lucas noticed it too. He caught my eye across the table, raising an eyebrow as Anna fidgeted with her phone under the table. I gave him a slight shake of my head, silently telling him to hold off. The time for confrontation wasn't here yet. Still, I couldn't resist poking the bear a little. As we finished dessert, I leaned over to Anna and said, "You've been on your phone a lot lately. Something important going on?" Her head snapped up, her expression guilty for just a fraction of a second before she plastered on a smile. "Just coordinating with the yoga group," she said smoothly. "We're planning a retreat next month." "A retreat?" My mom chimed in, her tone curious. "That sounds lovely. Where to?" "Sedona," Anna replied, the lie sliding off her tongue effortlessly. "Just a little getaway to recharge." Lucas coughed into his drink, clearly holding back a laugh. I had to fight the urge to join him. Sedona? She was good. I'd give her that. But her confidence only made me more determined to take her down. That night, as we drove home, I decided to push her a little further. "You didn't mention the yoga retreat?" I said casually, keeping my eyes on the road. She hesitated, just for a second. "Oh, it's a new thing. I wasn't sure if I was going to go, but the girls convinced me." "Sounds nice," I said, forcing a smile. "You deserve a break." Her hand slipped onto my thigh, squeezing lightly. "You're so sweet," she said, her voice dripping with affection. It was almost impressive how easily she lied. But every word only fueled my anger. She thought she was fooling me, but she had no idea the walls were closing in. Anna was playing a game. What she didn't know was that I was about to rewrite the rules. The days following the family dinner were a careful balancing act. Anna was as sweet and charming as ever, her smiles as practiced as a politician's. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence, meticulously cataloging every scrap of proof I could find. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to annihilate every shred of credibility she had. The recordings were gold, but I wanted more. Something visual. Something undeniable. Enter my new ally, Lucas. After our initial conversation, he'd been itching to help. "She's going to screw you over, Mark," he said during one of our secret meetings at the bar. "And I'm not letting that happen." "Good," I replied, "because I have an idea." That Friday, Anna announced she'd be meeting her yoga group for dinner. This time, I didn't need to rely on her lies. I had already checked the app on her phone when she wasn't looking. The yoga dinner was actually a meetup with Greg. They planned to hit a swanky restaurant downtown, the kind of place where couples go to celebrate anniversaries or indulge in discreet rendezvous. Perfect. Lucas and I followed her from the house. We parked a block away from the restaurant, watching as she stepped out of her car in a dress I'd never seen before. Tight, red, expensive. My stomach churned, but I kept my focus. This wasn't about emotions. This was about gathering the final pieces of the puzzle. Greg was already waiting for her at a corner table. He stood as she approached, pulling her into a hug that lingered just a little too long. Lucas cursed under his breath, but I held up a hand to stop him. "Not yet," I said. "We're not here to confront them." We slipped inside the restaurant, careful to stay out of sight. From a nearby table, Lucas pretended to text while I recorded their interaction on my phone. They laughed, leaned in close, and shared a bottle of wine. At one point, Greg reached across the table, brushing a strand of hair from Anna's face. She smiled, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. It was sickening, but it was also the confirmation I needed. I couldn't hear everything they said, but a few key phrases stood out. "I told you," Anna said, her voice low but excited. "Once it's done, we'll have everything we need." "He's clueless." Greg smirked. And the inheritance? It's all in place, she replied, taking a sip of her wine. By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone. Lucas clenched his fist under the table. You've got everything you need now, right? He asked quietly. Almost, I muttered. I wasn't just going to expose them. I wanted the betrayal to hit Anna like a freight train. For that, I needed a perfect moment, one that would strip away any chance of her spinning the story. That moment came the next evening. Anna had suggested we host a family dinner, which was just too good to pass up. She wanted to play the loving wife? Fine. Let her dig her own grave. I called Lucas and told him to bring a few extras, specifically a laptop and a portable speaker. We were going to make this dinner unforgettable. As the family arrived, Anna was in full hostess mode, pouring drinks and laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. I played along, complimenting her cooking and offering refills. Lucas kept giving me meaningful looks, but I held him off with subtle nods. Timing was everything. Dinner went smoothly, with plenty of conversation and wine. Anna was radiant, basking in the attention of my mom and stepdad. It almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. When dessert was served, I cleared my throat. Actually, I said, standing from the table, there's something I'd like to share. Anna froze, her smile faltering for just a second before she recovered. What is it, honey? I motioned for Lucas, who pulled out the laptop and speaker. Just a little something I've been working on, I said, my voice calm and measured. I think everyone here will find it illuminating. The room fell silent as I opened the folder on my laptop and hit play. The first recording filled the air, Anna's voice unmistakable. Greg, I told you, we need to keep this quiet. He can't know until it's all in place. My mom's face paled. My stepdad set down his fork with a clatter. Lucas leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, a grim smile on his face. Anna's expression went from confusion to panic in a matter of seconds. Mark, she stammered. What is this? Where did you? I held up a hand. Save it. There's more. The next recording played, followed by video footage from the restaurant. By the time it ended, the room was thick with tension. Anna sat frozen, her face a mask of horror. Care to explain? I asked, my voice like ice. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, the queen of manipulation was at a loss. My mom broke the silence, tears streaming down her face. Anna, she whispered, her voice trembling, how could you do this? I can explain, Anna stammered. It's not what it looks like. Oh, it's exactly what it looks like, I snapped. You've been lying to me, plotting with your boyfriend to steal from me and from this family. Anna turned to my mom, her voice desperate. You have to believe me. Mark's twisting everything. She's lying, Lucas said bluntly. We were there. We heard everything. The room erupted into chaos, but I stayed calm. I'd gotten exactly what I wanted. Anna's lies had crumbled, and everyone saw her for who she really was. Get out, I said finally, my voice cutting through the noise. Pack your things and get out of my house. Anna stared at me, stunned. You can't mean that. Oh, I do, I said coldly. And trust me, Anna, this is just the beginning. Her betrayal wasn't just exposed. It was burned into the memory of everyone who mattered to her. And I wasn't done yet. Anna didn't leave quietly. The moment the words, get out, left my mouth, she erupted. You're overreacting, she shrieked, her face twisted with anger and desperation. We can work this out, Mark. You're not thinking clearly. I stayed seated, arms crossed, while she ranted, throwing out every excuse she could muster. It was nothing, she insisted, pacing around the table. Greg and I were just talking. It wasn't serious. Talking? I asked, my tone dripping with sarcasm. Talking about divorce? About splitting my inheritance? About lying to everyone here? Anna's eyes darted around the room, looking for someone, anyone, to back her up. But my mom was staring at her plate, her hands trembling. My stepdad looked furious, his mouth set in a grim line. Lucas? He leaned back, arms crossed, enjoying every second of Anna's unraveling. Finally, Anna's mask cracked. Fine, she snapped, slamming her hand on the table. Yes, I was planning to leave. Yes, I was seeing Greg. But you're no saint, Mark. You've been so wrapped up in work, in your precious family businesses, that you barely noticed me anymore. I felt a flicker of pain. She knew how to twist the knife, but I quickly buried it. So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat and steal? I shot back. That's your excuse? Anna's face contorted, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then her eyes hardened, and her voice turned icy. You'll regret this, Mark, she hissed. You think you can just throw me out? You think this ends here? Her threat hung in the air, but I didn't flinch. I already packed your things, I said evenly. They're in the garage. Lucas will make sure you leave. Lucas grinned and stood, cracking his knuckles for dramatic effect. Happy to help, he said. Anna's glare darted between us before she stormed toward the door. This isn't over, she yelled over her shoulder. Actually, it is, I called after her. The slam of the front door was like music to my ears. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mom was the first to speak, her voice breaking. Mark, I'm so sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I never thought she was capable of this. She fooled all of us, I replied, my voice tired but steady. But it's over now. My stepdad reached across the table, squeezing my shoulder. We'll get through this, he said firmly. You're not alone in this, son. Lucas leaned against the doorframe, his expression smug. She's lucky I didn't throw her out myself, he muttered. What a piece of work. I nodded, grateful for their support. But deep down, I knew the fight wasn't over. Anna wasn't the type to slink away quietly. The next day, I filed for divorce. My lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Serena, didn't pull any punches. This is a straightforward case of adultery and attempted financial fraud, she said, flipping through the evidence I'd provided. She doesn't stand a chance. Good, I replied. I want her out of my life, and I want to make sure she doesn't get a dime. Serena smirked. Consider it done. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Anna didn't bother denying the affair, but she did try to fight for a share of the estate. I deserve compensation, she argued during a preliminary meeting. I sacrificed so much for this marriage. Sacrificed? I said, barely containing my rage. You sacrificed nothing. You lied, cheated, and tried to steal from me. Serena cut in, her tone icy. The evidence is overwhelming, Mrs. Hayes. You'll be lucky to walk away with your personal belongings. Anna's lawyer looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. While the divorce was underway, I decided it was time to deal with Greg. It didn't take much to find his wife, Lauren, a kind-hearted woman I'd met briefly at a charity event. She deserved to know the truth. I sent her an anonymous message with photos, recordings, and a summary of Greg's plans with Anna. It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. Within days, Greg's wife left him, taking their 2 kids and filing for divorce. His job, a high-level position at a finance firm, quickly evaporated once word got out about his extracurricular activities. Anna, too, felt the ripple effects. Her friends abandoned her, unwilling to associate with someone so toxic. The fancy lifestyle she'd flaunted evaporated overnight. But there was one final twist. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I discovered Anna had tried to stash money in a secret bank account. I stumbled upon it while reviewing financial records with my lawyer. This account isn't listed in any of the disclosures she submitted, Serena said, her brow furrowed. Can we do anything about it? I asked. Serena grinned. Oh, we can do more than that. This is fraud, Mark. She's in serious trouble. I reported Anna to the authorities, and within weeks, she was facing legal consequences. The account was frozen, the funds seized, and her reputation. What little was left of it, completely destroyed. By the time the dust settled, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Anna and Greg's betrayal had nearly broken me, but in the end, they were the ones left in ruins. And me? I was finally free. The first morning after Anna was officially out of my life felt surreal. The house was eerily quiet, free from her incessant humming, her clattering around in the kitchen, or the smell of the expensive perfumes she wore daily. For the first time in months, I wasn't consumed by suspicion or anger. But the peace was short-lived. As I sipped my coffee, a flood of memories hit me. Anna laughing at a joke during our honeymoon, her arms around me during a surprise anniversary trip, the nights we spent planning a future I thought was real. The weight of her betrayal hadn't fully hit me before, but now it came crashing down. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. Lucas called later that day, his voice upbeat. "How's freedom treating you?" he asked. "It's quiet," I admitted. "Well, you need to get out of that house," he said firmly. "Come grab a drink tonight. It'll do you good." I hesitated, but eventually agreed. Sitting around stewing in my thoughts wasn't doing me any favors. At the bar, Lucas didn't hold back. "You look like hell, man," he said, sliding a beer in front of me. "Thanks for the pep talk," I muttered. "Look," he continued, "I know this sucks. You loved her. But she was poison, Mark. You're better off without her." I nodded, knowing he was right. But knowing and feeling were two different things. The rest of the night was a blur of beers, laughter, and Lucas doing his best to distract me. By the time I stumbled home, I felt a little lighter, like the cracks in my armor were starting to heal. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to fill the empty hours. I started going to the gym again, pushing myself harder than I had in years. The physical exertion was a welcome escape from the emotional chaos. But the nights were the hardest. Lying in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, my mind inevitably drifted to Anna. Did she regret what she'd done? Did she miss me, even a little? Or was she too busy trying to salvage the wreckage of her life? One night, after tossing and turning for hours, I decided to see a therapist. It wasn't an easy decision. Admitting I needed help felt like admitting weakness. But the sessions turned out to be a lifeline. Dr. Harper, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes, didn't let me wallow. "You've been through something traumatic," she said during our first session. "But you're here. That's the first step toward healing." She helped me unpack my feelings of betrayal, anger, and self-doubt. For so long, I'd wondered if Anna's affair was my fault, if I'd been too distant, too focused on work. But Dr. Harper made it clear. Anna's choices were her own. No amount of neglect justified her deceit. As the weeks turned into months, I started to find my footing. I redecorated the house, stripping it of every trace of Anna. I sold the fancy dining set she'd insisted on, donated her designer throw pillows, and repainted the bedroom a deep navy blue, a stark contrast to the soft pastels she'd loved. Lucas helped me host a housewarming party for my new, Anna-free home. It was a small gathering, just family and a few close friends, but it felt like a fresh start. At one point, my mom pulled me aside. "I'm so proud of you, Mark," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "You've handled all of this with so much strength." "Thanks, Mom," I replied, swallowing the lump in my throat. One evening, as I was clearing out old files, I stumbled across a folder labeled Future Plans. Inside were documents Anna and I had drafted together, plans for vacations, potential names for kids, and even a list of dream renovations for the house. I stared at the papers for a long time, a mix of sadness and relief washing over me. Sadness for the life I thought we were building, and relief that I was no longer tied to someone who had taken that life for granted. With a deep breath, I fed the documents through the shredder. Anna had stolen enough from me. My trust, my peace of mind, my sense of security. She wouldn't take another second of my future. By the time the divorce was finalized, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The house felt like my own again. My relationships with family and friends were stronger than ever, and my work was flourishing. Most importantly, I was learning to be happy on my own. Anna and Greg's betrayal had been a storm, but I'd weathered it. And now, as I stood in the sunlight of my rebuilt life, I knew one thing for sure. They were the ones left in the shadows. It didn't take long for word of Anna and Greg's betrayal to spread. Our social circles weren't huge, and the details of their affair, and my subsequent public confrontation, became the kind of juicy gossip people couldn't resist. At first, I hated it. Everywhere I went, someone seemed to know. Whether it was whispered conversations at the grocery store or awkward glances from colleagues, The attention made my skin crawl. I wasn't ashamed of how I'd handled things, but I didn't want my private life to be entertainment. But then I realized something. The fallout wasn't just mine to deal with. Anna and Greg were bearing the brunt of it too. One afternoon, Lucas called me, his voice practically dripping with glee. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Try me," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "Remember Greg's cushy finance job? Well, apparently, some of his clients heard about what happened. They weren't too happy about trusting their money to a guy who can't even keep his personal life together." I chuckled. "So, what? He lost his job?" "Yep. Fired last week. Word is he's trying to get hired somewhere else, but no one wants to touch him." I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about consequences. Greg had gambled everything on Anna and lost. Anna wasn't faring much better. A mutual friend, Sarah, called me not long after the divorce was finalized. We hadn't spoken much during the ordeal, but I'd always liked her honesty. "I know this is awkward," she began, "but I thought you should know. Anna's been trying to spin the story. She's telling people you were controlling, that you drove her to cheat." I sighed, the familiar anger bubbling up. "Of course she is. Let me guess, people aren't buying it?" Sarah hesitated. "Some of her old friends might have, but most of us know better. After what you showed us, well, let's just say she's not getting much sympathy." "Good," I said bluntly. "She's also struggling," Sarah added. "She had to move in with her sister. She's been trying to find work, but no one wants to hire her. People see her as a liability." I paused, processing her words. Part of me wanted to gloat, but another part felt a flicker of pity. Anna had dug her own grave, but I couldn't deny that she'd hit rock bottom. "Thanks for letting me know," I said finally. Sarah's voice softened. "You deserve better, Mark. And for what it's worth, we're all rooting for you." The public fallout wasn't just about Anna and Greg. It also gave me a chance to rebuild my reputation. Friends who had been distant during the chaos started reaching out again, offering support and encouragement. One day, while grabbing coffee downtown, I ran into Lauren, Greg's ex-wife. She looked tired but composed, holding a to-go cup and scrolling through her phone. "Mark," she said, her expression softening when she saw me. "Hey, Lauren," I replied, feeling a pang of guilt. "How are you holding up?" She gave a small shrug. "It's been hard, but honestly, I'm glad I found out when I did. I deserve better than Greg." "You do," I said sincerely. She hesitated for a moment, then added, "Thank you, by the way, for telling me. I know it wasn't easy, but you saved me a lot of wasted years." Her words stayed with me long after we parted ways. It was a reminder that even in the midst of betrayal, there were moments of clarity and connection that made the pain worthwhile. As the months passed, the gossip faded, replaced by new scandals and dramas. Anna and Greg became old news, their names mentioned only occasionally and always with disdain. I, on the other hand, was moving forward. The same community that had watched me fall apart was now watching me rebuild. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The fallout had been brutal, but it had also been liberating. Anna and Greg had tried to destroy me, but in the end, they had only destroyed themselves. It had been almost a year since I exposed Anna and Greg, and while life was finally stable, there were moments when the scars still ached. They weren't as sharp as they once were, but certain reminders, an old photo, a familiar scent, or even passing the restaurant where they'd met, could bring everything rushing back. One of those moments came unexpectedly on a quiet Saturday afternoon. I was reorganizing my office, something I'd been putting off for months. Hidden in the back of a drawer, I found a wedding album Anna had insisted on making. I hadn't seen it since we moved into the house, and I almost threw it straight into the trash. But curiosity got the better of me. I flipped through the pages, my jaw tightening as I stared at the photos. There we were, smiling in the golden light of a late summer afternoon, surrounded by friends and family. Anna looked radiant in her dress, her hand resting gently on my chest. Back then, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. Now, all I saw were lies. I slammed the album shut and tossed it into the donation pile, my chest tight with anger. But the anger didn't last long. Instead, It morphed into something quieter, heavier, a deep sadness for the man I used to be. That night, I shared my discovery with Lucas over beers. "I found the wedding album," I said, swirling my drink. It hit me harder than I expected. Lucas leaned back in his chair, studying me. "That's normal, man. You loved her. Hell, you probably still love the version of her you thought she was." I nodded, the truth of his words settling over me like a weight. "It's just, I can't believe how blind I was. How did I not see it?" "Because you trusted her," Lucas said simply. "That's not a weakness, Mark. That's on her for abusing it." His words helped, but they didn't erase the ache. A few days later, I had a session with Dr. Harper and decided to bring up the album. "I found it," I said, staring at the carpet. "The wedding album." It felt like a slap in the face. Dr. Harper nodded thoughtfully. "That's understandable. Physical reminders of a painful past can be powerful triggers. What did you do with it?" "I put it in the donation pile," I replied. "Didn't want it in the house anymore." "How did that feel?" she asked. "Like I was letting go," I admitted, "but also like I was erasing a part of myself." She leaned forward slightly, her expression gentle. "Mark, letting go of the pain doesn't mean erasing your past. It means acknowledging it, learning from it, and choosing to move forward. You don't have to forget what happened to heal from it." Her words stayed with me long after the session ended. That weekend, I went through the rest of the house, looking for anything that tied me to Anna. Some items were easy to toss. Her old books, her skincare products, the tacky gold-framed mirror she'd insisted on hanging in the hallway. But others gave me pause. The framed photo of us from our first anniversary, the handwritten notes she'd leave in my briefcase, the Christmas ornaments we'd picked out together. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or bitterness as I looked at them. Instead, I felt a quiet gratitude, not for Anna, but for the lessons the experience had taught me. I packed the sentimental items into a small box, labeling it simply the past. It wasn't about erasing her anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. Life moved forward, as it always does. The wounds Anna left behind were healing, albeit slowly. Some days were harder than others, but I was learning to lean into the pain instead of running from it. Because for the first time in a long time, I could see a future that was mine, and mine alone. And that future was worth every step it took to get there. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.